All right, here we go. Welcome to the 102nd edition NAFI Mentor Live. My name is Aaron Dabney. I serve on your board of directors, and I have, I think, the coolest volunteer gig at NAFI, getting to coordinate Mentor Live and working with all the awesome presenters we have. We've got a really good program for you tonight. It might not be what you originally saw. Unfortunately, Mark King had some unavoidable things come up in life, but we went out and got here we go. We went out and got our favorite aviation psychotherapist, Jolie Lucas. She's going to give us sort of a 30,000-foot view tonight of what she's doing with her On Second Thought program. If you've had a chance to see her monthly broadcast, it's amazing. And of course, you know some of the other things that Jolie does. So we're really glad to have her tonight. As always, a little bit of housekeeping. Uh, this presentation, like all of our others, is eligible for Wings credit. So it's just 2 clicks, just there below your broadcast window. You'll get prompted to sign in to your FAA safety.gov account. Take the quiz, get your credit, show your friends, make sure that they're here next time. That's a really valuable thing for us to be able to do that for you. You can also see some information there about Jolie. And importantly, if you're not a member of NAFI, of course, you don't have to be a NAFI member to be a participant in Mentor Live, but we'd love to have you. You don't have to be a CFI or even a pilot. If you care about aviation safety, then our mission at NAFI is for you. So we'd love to have you. And there's now 101 previous Mentor Live broadcasts going back years. If you scroll back to the top, I believe, of the website, now you can find all those old broadcasts there. So really good stuff out there. We want this to be interactive. So if you're viewing live, we welcome your comments, welcome your questions. We'll probably save most of those for the end. I don't want to interrupt Jolie's groove. She's got a good thing here, but I promise we'll get to as many of you as you can. And our chair emeritus, Bob Mayer, is there in the chat this evening, doing some instigating and passing your messages along. So I want to go ahead and bring Jolie on here. Of course, as there we go. There we go. A licensed and practicing psychotherapist, a Mooney owner. I love Moonies. I don't know if we talked about this before, Jolie, but I got my commercial in a Mooney and just one of my favorite airplanes. So I joined the cult early, and I've gotten time in several different models and love them myself. Jolie's an instrument rated commercial pilot and enemy of fun. I don't know about that. I've done enough with her to say, I don't know about that. We'll see what she has to say about that. All our contact info is there, and that'll come back up again for you later this evening. So without further ado, you've got some good stuff, Julie. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. You have the flight controls.
All righty. Thank you so much. It's good to have everybody here this evening. I was so thrilled to be asked to come and speak to you all tonight. Thank you to Mentor Live for inviting me and also for their seeing the value of us talking about the gray meatloaf that's in between your ears, your brain. And Aaron did mention that I am doing On Second Thought, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. But if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can do so with this QR code. And we're just thrilled that we have the ability to have a live video series. It's the second Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Central, and you can find out more on our website on secondthought.me. So today we are going to cover attention as a safety system, decision making, and then I threw in some fun brain stuff because I can do what I want when I'm PIC, right? And On Second Thought focuses 100% on human factors. And I think that it's an area that we don't really talk about enough. And so it's not about fixing people or blaming them, but it's understanding that if you've got a brain, if you have a human brain, then what we'll be talking about today will apply to you. And I am glad you are here. We are going to be focusing on the 3 items that I talked about earlier, but many times I've got pilots, non-pilot companions, mechanics, ATC, airport managers and operators, and of course, CFIs. And you're all entitled to credit, so that's fantastic. Um, So, the best laid plans often go awry. We're going to go on a little adventure tonight. When we talk about aviation safety, we focus on procedures, regulations, the technology, and all of those things are very important. But underneath them all is something even more fundamental: how humans notice things and how they decide what to do next. So before there's a checklist error, a bad decision, before an accident report has been filled out, there's almost always a moment where something changes. The sound that's slightly different, a gauge that seems to drift a little bit, a conversation between a right seater and a left seater that suddenly feels tense. Or it could just be a quiet sense that nothing's right. Something is just a bit amiss. And for those of you that don't know, I'm actually a practicing psychotherapist, and I am in my office right now in San Luis Obispo. And so I've seen clients all day on the couch. And so a lot of times, what I'm working with folks in counseling about is the ability to respond instead of react. We all react. That is something that humans do. But I ask folks to consider putting a pause in between your reaction to something that happens and your response. Because in that pause, we can have some reflection, and then we tend to make better decisions. So the way that the title On Second Thought came about was actually from my clinical practice, where I'm telling people a great phrase when they've changed their mind about something or they've looked at it a different way is to say on second thought. So I would like you to be able to use this chat if you are able. And what I would like you to do now is to take a look at the image that will be populating on your screen. And I'd like you to count how many things that you see that are blue, and just take a gander at the image and jot down your number in the chat if you would like to, or just where you're at. You just make a mental note. How many things in the image are blue? Okay. So what you can see now is that there are a lot of blue items in the screen. I think there's about 13, if I remember it correctly.
Let's see.
So,
Bob says we've gotten one response of 6. We'll see if we get anything else in the chat room here.
okay. Yeah, yeah. So someone's off 6. There's about 13. And so if you do jot your number in the chat, that would be fantastic. And I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds, and we'll go on to what's next. Okay, now I'd like you to jot something else down. How many red things did you see? How many things did you see that were red in that image? Jot your number in the chat or make a note where you're at. Here comes the image. And here's all the things that are red, which again is about 13 things. And is there anything in the chat? Any red guesses that we have?
I think we may still be getting a few of the blue guesses. I've seen an 8 and a 12. And Jerry said 13. So, Jerry, if you're talking about blue, good job.
Yeah. So what I wanted to explore with this slide is that the exercise that we just did illustrates three important cognitive principles. The first is called selective attention. The brain filters out information to avoid overload. So you might have not seen anything that was red because your brain was looking for blue things. The second concept is called inattentional blindness. When attention is focused on one task, more obvious things can be missed. And the third concept is called expectation bias. Again, that if you're expecting normal, then you're more likely to focus on things that are normal, and any sort of abnormal items fall into the background. So the key takeaway in that is not to see if you're red, blue color blind, but to know that in aviation, we don't just miss things because they're invisible. We miss them because our attention was somewhere else. So pilots that are looking at the weather might miss some cues that that engine is giving you. Mechanics looking for one discrepancy that a owner comes in with a squawk on this sort of a system, and they might miss a squawk or a problem with the other system because they're not looking for it. And how this plays out with ATC is that they might be focused on one traffic flow and miss a new conflict that's forming. So our attention decides what reality we experience. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what we call the sequence of safety. There we go. So you can see the sequence of safety there. It goes from attention to cognition to prediction to decision to action. And again, this is across all sorts of aviators, whether it's a non-pilot companion, a pilot, ATC, mechanic, doesn't really matter. So we're going to start with the habit of attention. I've learned a lot from studying attention and the resources that we've used as far as studies of attention. And again, before anything goes wrong, there's attention. And safety starts with awareness and attention. One thing that I try to help folks know in counseling is that attention is state dependent. So, what I mean by that is every decision begins with us noticing something. When our attention narrows, we're tense. And so, what we have to do is make sure that we are as calm as possible because calm equals capacity. And so you think about it, there might have been a time where you were rushing and you were wound up and you just had to get things done or you had to get the plane on the ground or whatever it might be. What we know about our attentional state right then is that we are constricted, we're narrow, we're tense, and our ability to pay attention falls away. Your feelings oftentimes are early warning signs. So if you're paying attention to your feelings about a flight, about a situation, sometimes it's just that something feels off. Our body oftentimes notices before words, and that if we catch up with these early signals, then we're oftentimes able to get in front of bad decisions and we're able to pay attention. Remembering that paying attention buys us time. So, again, what I was speaking about a few minutes ago with having folks not react, but to have their reaction privately, to pause. And in that pause, we get more time to make a good decision so that we are responding instead of reacting. Now, for those of you who have students or have a right seater that's a non-pilot companion or another pilot that's flying with you, what I would like you to know about this subject that we're on right now is that attention is socially contagious. So we know that attention is state dependent. So if I'm feeling calm and relaxed, then I can pay attention more efficiently. But if I am wound up, then that can be contagious in the cockpit or in the workplace or in the tower cab. So calm can be spread. Anxiety is super fast and it it comes in quickly, and it can be contagious. So I did notice in my counseling practice when we got back from the pandemic and we're able to see people in person again. And I tend to specialize in depression, anxiety, recovery from trauma, that I could pick up when I'm back in person with somebody, I can really pick up on their vibe and what's going on. So I know you instructors out there have that. You might have a student that's really, really nervous about something and you find yourself, your heart rate's going up a little bit. I want you to know that exposure and learning aren't the same as experience. So, experience alone isn't enough. We have to have that ability to pause, reflect, check out what's going on with the different patterns that we see. And learning requires the pause. So, if you think about a reaction coming from the low part of your brain, and a response coming from the part of your brain, upper part, your frontal lobes, that we don't share with your dogs and cats, then we know that reaction's going to happen. We got to take a beat and then respond. So I believe in the military, they used to say, wind your watch. So that's something where they're building in a pause before you do something, you wind your watch. For the younger folks, they have no idea what wind your watch means. So expertise includes letting go. Experts don't scan everything, they filter. And that's not arrogance, it's efficiency. So, what happens is experts tend to ignore more and they let go of just stuff that's noisy. And that helps us with clarity of decision making. I would love it if y'all just replace blame with understanding. Everybody misses cues. People are human. We um, we are hardest typically on ourselves, but when we can stay curious about what's going on, then that does feel calmer and it gives that time to build in that pause. So, again, on second thought, and this whole idea of the brain research and human factors is that we're not going to blame somebody. We're going to replace that with understanding because miscues, if you miss something, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means that you're a human and the meatloaf between your ears needs looking at. So take a look at these photos. High time, low time. We were all out there young and we had a dream about flying or being a mechanic or controller. And I might resemble the girl that's down in front of the blanket that we had for many, many years. I was an airport girl, learned how to drive a stick at the Banning Airport in Southern California. So, we're going to be talking about higher experience folks, and attention is the multiplier with higher experience folks. This is Captain Mike Jesh, who was just awarded, I don't want to get the title wrong. Aaron, is it um, CFI of the year or is he the fast team representative of the year? I think it is.
Mike is the fast team rep of the year. Yes.
There we go. There you go. And Mike was my instructor for instruments in the Los Angeles basin. Quite a place to learn instruments. And he was also my instructor in the Mooney for my commercial. So he sent me this wonderful picture, which I love. So higher experience folks, if you're out there and you've got 20, 30, 40 years of experience, again, you tend to notice what matters and ignore what doesn't. Um, so in folks that have more experience, they tend to pick up on the bodily cues a little bit more than a novice does, and would suggest for you higher experience folks that you stay open, curious, and again, state regulated. So your nervous system is in a calmer state so that you can notice subtle changes before they come obvious. And again, sometimes it's just a slight feeling that something in the flow isn't quite right. Our lower experience folks have a bit of a challenge in some ways because oftentimes they scan the environment too broadly. So they are paying attention to every single thing. And what happens is when you are paying attention to every single thing, you might become overwhelmed. If you become overwhelmed, you would be much more likely to react versus respond. So that's that fight, flight, or freeze. So attention can be trained. Just think about if you have been an instrument student or you have um, worked with students who are getting their instrument rating. We do know that sometimes they get fixated on an instrument. And so what we have to do is train them with their scan. So attention can be trained faster than you can get hours. And so that's wonderful. And their ability to not pay attention to things that don't matter can be practiced and recalibrated. I know it may sound silly and it's not popular, but I don't fly with music on because for me, I want to be able to hear that engine. And so that's a way that I protect my ability to stay focused. And I'm not thinking about, some song that's on in my Lightspeed headset. So here's our model of attention. Again, that attention is state based, so we need to calm, and we pick up signals and patterns. It is socially contagious, and we have to be able to use reflection and our expertise. And safer outcomes don't start with safer actions. They start with paying attention. So here's some takeaways for you. Experience lives in memory, and attention determines whether you can access it. So, if you can slow your speech rate to slow hand movements or head movements, then that will help you to keep your state more regulated. You can drop your voice half an octave. Lower pitch signals safety more than volume reduction. And you can breathe through your nose on purpose. Again, another takeaway is adding that pause before you switch tasks, switch frequencies, accept a clearance, or a new constraint. So again, we're regulating yourself because you are broadcasting. Number 2 is we're going to be looking for signals. Signals like they show up like brief changes, not really big sustained emotions. So it could be that you're irritated or that you feel restless. Something's not lining up. And so we're not looking at the emotions that you might have been feeling for a week. We're looking at, is there sort of a spike in suddenly I feel crabby? And so oftentimes when we pay attention to those patterns, then we are able to know that I am getting more wound up. My nervous system is getting more dysregulated. So I need to take a pause so that I can pay attention better. And I know you're probably sick of me saying the word attention, but this is the first step is knowing what we do and don't pay attention to. And I wanted you to have these takeaways. So this is another one that it has to do with your social field monitoring toolkit. Okay. So first one is a pace check. Is the speech that's going on, is it getting faster? Is it getting clipped? What sort of movements are going on in the airplane with the pilots, with a non-pilot companion? Has your ability to respond, has that tempo changed? And so the rising pace, when we start to speed up, then that's oftentimes the earliest sign of what we call cognitive narrowing. And also with non-pilot companions, I always watch if they go silent. Sometimes if something is going on, they go silent because they don't know what to do and they don't really understand what's going on. So checking for body language, checking for pace, and also checking what's going on with your non-pilot companions and seeing if suddenly, the silent treatment's going on. And so, in our attention plan, we're going to build in that pause. We're going to calm before conclusions. So that means that we're going to pause and reflect before we react. We need to slow our body down enough to think. And reflection fails in a defensive state. So if we are feeling uh, dysregulated, nervous, anxious, upset, we are much more likely to face a situation with our dukes up, or we want to run. So again, that's low brain stuff. We don't want that. So we want to regulate first, notice later because we're taking that pause. We're going to filter better, knowing what we have to pay attention to and what we have to ignore. And we're going to update our patterns so that we know I don't have to respond to everything. I've been here before, either with training or with experience, and I can reset myself and my patterns. All right, I'm going to give you some real world examples and a little bit of a pucker factor. So we're going to be talking about a precision approach that happened in IMC, and they went missed on the localizer. What was going on with the pilot was that they were drifting slightly below the glide slope, that they were having to do more corrections than usual, that good old sword fighting and things like that, that there was a crosswind that was increasing that they did not anticipate. And so they were having to make a bunch more corrections than normal. Their airspeed was up and down. And they were noticing because of all these things, they had a slight increase in the workload. And so that was indicated by this pilot becoming more radio silent. There was some tunnel vision going on, and their scan discipline obviously has been degraded because of all of the things that are above. The pilot decided to go around, but it didn't end well. For those of you who are, I would say, 55 years and older, you know what the lawn dart is right there. That came in and how we all played with those and lived to tell the story. But that's what happened to the pilot that tried the go around. There were some things that happened that attention might have triggered. So if this pilot was paying better attention, they would be able to re-examine in that pause, how stable am I? Is this a stabilized approach? Do I need to go around earlier? If I was paying better attention, I might have noticed the crosswind component and that it was changing over time. And resetting my pace would allow me to regain that calm, and I would have more bandwidth. So what happened with this is the lack of paying attention stole the time that this pilot had to analyze and decide and act. Excuse me, still getting over a little bit of the yuck. So we're going to talk a bit now about decision making. So how the attention that we have learned how to regulate and how to flourish and make better. We're going to speak now about what you do with all that good attention that you have now. Excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat. So, why good people make bad decisions? Decision making is as state dependent as cognition. People have to feel safe before they can reflect. When you make a decision under pressure that looks obvious in hindsight, it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that your nervous system went down to survival mode. Again, fight, flight, and freeze live down there, and we don't need that in the airplane. So here's a scenario is you're late to a meeting. You need to get there and you need to get there fast. So you decide to take a route that you've never taken before. And you know what ends up happening? You're even later than usual because you never take that route. And so that idea that there is urgency and I have to get somewhere, errors like that increase as the stress increases because what happens is that stress gets our attention to not be efficient anymore and we make bad decisions. Hate to say it, but we do it. So there is sort of a myth about rational decision making that, that we compare all the options, we do what's familiar. And here's a little bit of a scenario. So let's say that this person is going into the grocery store and they've decided, I want to really look at these two boxes of cereal because I want to make sure that I'm getting the best value for my money. The human brain likes to make decisions quickly. And so what ends up happening is you say, I wanted to do that, but I'm not. I'm just going to go with what I know. So the lower part of our brain wants us to make decisions quickly. And so they aren't terribly rational. So we go with what's familiar. Like I've always flown this approach, or I've always been able to sneak in this way. And that those time pressures that we have can sort of push us toward what feels known, even then, even when that isn't good for us. So I want to talk a little bit about stress because it's really important. And I know there's a lot on this slide, but I do think it's important that you understand some of the items that are coming up on the screen. A lot of us know that it's a physiological response, that we have just sort of squirting of stress hormones and cortisol and adrenaline, all sorts of things. Humans are made to deal with acute stress. That is that, a basketball comes bouncing into the road as you're driving, and you're able to think, there's probably a 7-year-old chasing that ball, and I can slam on my brakes. That's acute stress. We are made for that. Mild stress is what got you here on time, and it got me here on time and prepared. So mild stress is fine. But when we're looking at moderate, severe, or extreme stress, that increases our inability to take things to the higher part of our brain and to have that pause and to have a response again that comes from the part of the brain that has more than three choices. So, what happens with chronic stress is that fight, flight, and freeze get activated a lot more. So, um, stress feels like anxiety. So, it's not necessarily anxiety, but it's got some of the same hormonal and chemical basis. So, I want you to recognize that when stress is high, when it's moderate, severe, or extreme, you are much more likely to make decisions from the lower part of your brain. And stress doesn't make knowing the options, it doesn't like take that away. They don't become invisible, but it makes them harder to make the good choice because remember that paying attention and decision making are state dependent. Your brain, and this is Captain Cortex, he's our mascot for On Second Thought, and I think he's cute as can be. Um, so, our brain, its function is particularly the low part of our brain is to predict and to protect. So, prediction comes from the past, and pro- protection comes from the future. So, your brain doesn't want you to be happy. Your low brain doesn't give a rip about you being happy, feeling joy, feeling satisfaction, feeling bliss, feeling enthusiastic. Not at all. The low part of your brain does not care at all. It wants to keep you stuck in doing what you've always done because stuck feels safe. Your brain wants predictable. It wants the same pattern, the same outcomes, and the same story. So your brain, that low brain of yours, that's right back behind your ears, about the size of an almond, it will choose familiar pain over unfamiliar peace. Well, we have to tell ourselves in that pause when we're doing some reflection that growth a lot of times feels wonky. It doesn't feel calm. It doesn't feel balanced. But as I'm growing and changing, we have to have the ability to say, this isn't dangerous. It is new. I remember learning to fly at a later time in life. I had already been a professor at the graduate level. I was used to being in charge. And boy, that part of my brain was like, I don't know if you're cut out for this. And I had to tell myself, I feel, like I said runway 30 instead of 30, and my CFI corrected me. And you just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm doing. So, want to talk a little bit about time pressure. I was talking to one of my clients about this afternoon, and the research shows that urgency, that sense of I have to get it done, I don't have time, that is an emotional state. It is not true. It's not a fact. We think it's a fact, and that low brain, think of it like the Chicken Little. It's super fast and speedy, and it's very negative. And so what it does is it says, no, you're under time pressure. You got to go. You can't pause. And what I want you to know is that is not true. It is not a fact. A lot of times making any decision feels safer than waiting because we want that decision to be made swiftly so that we're not uncomfortable. And time pressure, when we're believing that thought that we have time pressure, it really reduces the information and the processing depth. And it also prevents us from reflection and having good judgment. So again, when something feels like you have to make a decision right away, I want you to tell yourself that is just a thought. It is not true. We know that attention is selective and not comprehensive. I'm not going to point any fingers, but a lot of times we're driving down the road and we're maybe paying attention to something on that's hands-free where we're sending texts back and forth. And we recognize that we've gone 10 minutes up the road without really paying attention. So again, attention is very selective. We do not process everything. We filter out stuff first, just like you did with the red and blue items on the original screen. And attention filters reality before reasoning begins. That's a little bit scary in a way because if I've got that little gecko in my head, the little low part of my brain that only has fight, flight, and freeze, then if that's telling me what reality is before I can get it up to my frontal part of my brain, that makes me nervous. So that's why we have to make sure that we're staying as calm as possible and as wise as possible, and recognize that I can only pay attention to so much. And I have to make sure that what I'm paying attention to is very, very, that you're mindful about it, that you're wise about it. In teaching Right Seat Ready, as I have, which is my companion safety seminar for the past 15 years or more, I'm able to really check in with people. I can watch what they're doing in class, and I can see when their brain is the low brain starting to chirp at them about they're a loser, they can't really do this, why did they sign up? And I was talking to a helper who's going to be helping me this Friday and Saturday when I teach in California. I said a lot of people cry in class and a lot of folks cry in the simulator when we get in the Redbird. It's just that your brain is saying, nope, no, this is stay small, stay small. You've never done this before. You're an idiot. You're not going to get it. And so what we have to do is to be able to calm ourselves. And I just expect people to cry now, just like in counseling, first session, people are usually crying through most of it, which is cool. Got to get it out. So experience can betray us, like the slide says. It's valuable, but it doesn't exempt us from being human and having the little Chicken Little down in the low part of the brain. If it's familiar, it feels right. But when you're a student or when you're teaching somebody, it doesn't feel familiar. and we want to go back to saying 3-0 instead of 3-0. So recognition can move faster than reality. So I will also want you to remember that we can train in recognition, and experience increases confidence before it increases accuracy. So I know that, there's lots of times where people have said, I've been flying for 40 years. And unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily mean anything when it comes to your ability to pay attention and to make good decisions. So I love this screen because I live in California, and I live in Shell Beach, which is Pismo Beach area. And so I got to thinking as I'm driving down the 101, if you're Californian, it's mandatory, along with paying California state tax. You have to put the word the in front of the highway number. It's a California thing. So I decided to make this slide with somebody who's driven down the 101 a lot, and they know what to pay attention to, and they know what to not pay attention to. And then on the right side of the screen, we have the lower experienced person that is freaking out. Like, I don't know how many of you, I learned to drive as well in Southern California on the freeways. And I remember trying to get up to speed, stay between the lanes, use my blinkers, don't go over the speed limit, all those things. And so a novice, a person with less experience, they pay attention to too many things. Higher attention folks, higher experience folks tend to play better attention because they know what doesn't really matter. I don't know about you, it might be interesting in the chat. Um, I think that pilots are pretty good drivers. I know that we do have a lead foot. We tend to go fast. But I also think that as pilots, since we're thinking in front of the plane so much, that, when I'm driving down the 101, the 5, the 405, whatever it might be, I'm also looking about 6, 7 cars ahead, and I can see what people are doing. So I always think that we're better drivers because we're good pilots. I remember that Dukes come up. We get defensive in decision makings. And so, again, what tends to happen is we have an idea that something should be happening a different way. And reality goes, nope, here's what's happening. And we get defensive. We want to deny conflicting information. And again, this is when somebody doesn't take the time to slow things down, to ask questions, maybe to be the person that complicates the day because they need to pause. And avoidance usually shows up, dukes up, shows up when something feels risky. Remember, that low part of your brain is saying, danger, nope, don't get an advanced degree, don't get an advanced rating, don't buy an airplane, don't have your partner go through a companion seminar. Nope, nope, nope. Stay small. Don't use your voice. Don't speak up. And it can be very, very costly. So I want you to recognize that in yourself if it's happening. Remember your beautiful bodies that we're taking really good care of, right? Um, Stuff shows up in your body. Early signals come in, and that discomfort that you're having is data. So again, when your brain goes, this is wrong, you've got to remember it's not wrong, it's just new. I don't know, yeah, maybe some of you have had this, I certainly have, where I walk into a room and I feel uneasy. And I don't really know why, but something in the energy of the room, because remember that the ability to pay attention is state dependent, and that our state is socially contagious. So that uneasy feeling that you might have isn't wrong, but sometimes it's because your awareness comes in before your words do, before your language does. So remember to pay attention to that beautiful body. Boy, it gets us to do some great things, right? We get to live in 3 dimensions. We get to instruct people. And I love the teaching part of my job. But that situational awareness comes first. So good decisions, of course, depend on your state, that you're calm and relaxed. that we have the ability to pause and reflect, and that we can make good decisions. When any part of that chain breaks, then that's when our decisions suffer. I'd like to show you a video, so make sure your sound is on so you can hear it. And I want you just to, maybe you could put it in the chat. Watch the video and let's see where the chain breaks here.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just.
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? Quick!
Well, what did you notice with our gal and with our guy? Just write it in the chat. I love that video because it's all about situational awareness, because I can't sleep and all my sweaters are snagged. Don't know why. All right. So what we know about experience is that it improves speed, but it doesn't remove the fact that you are a human. Excuse me. I've got a little tiny gnat that's been flying around me. I don't know if you can see it, but it makes paying attention a little bit harder when you've got somebody that's doing some flybys. So again, being faster doesn't mean that you're less human. It's a way of saying that speed and experience don't remove the same limits that we all have under stress. Attention narrows, assumptions sneak in. The lower part of the brain is saying, don't do it. Don't do it. It's not right. Sometimes our experience makes us feel a little bit more complacent or entitled. And again, if we have that brain in between our ears, which we do, we all struggle with some of the same things. One thing I did want to mention is that on the website, we do have on secondthought.me, we have episodes 1, 2, and 3 of On Second Thought. If you were to go to the course resources section, you would see not only the psychology notes that I developed, but you can see the studies that we used for the research studies that we used. So here's an in-flight scenario. We got a Cessna 182 on a 2.5-hour cross country, got a non-pilot companion in the right and a PIC in the left, of course, and there's some marginal VFR ahead. The TAF is predicting improvement, and you got all those beautiful hills rolling below you. But there are airports scattered about every 20 or 30 nautical miles. So lots of airports. So what we're going to first do is notice our intention. There we go. Cute mechanic pointing. You can always tell when I make the pictures because I think it's important to have a little bit of a cute mechanic in your life. So after about 10 minutes leveling off, the engine sound hasn't changed dramatically, but it's changed a bit. It sounds a bit rougher than usual. All the instruments seem to be in the green, except one cylinder is a little bit tardy for the party. It's a little bit lower than the other ones. So the passenger, non-pilot passenger, that picks up on bodily cues a little bit quicker says, "Is it supposed to sound like that?" It's probably nothing, right? And nothing's wrong yet. But what we do when we pay attention here is that we notice that something is a bit different. So here comes the cognition part. We need to resist the urge to dismiss it. Remember, the low part of the brain wants you to make decisions quickly, and it wants you to stay the same. It doesn't want you to try anything new. It wants to keep you stuck. So the something feels off isn't just noise. It just isn't ridiculous that somebody's feeling that way. It's data, and we need to pay attention to it. You can see some of the possible explanations that it could be, like with mixture, spark plug, icing, all that stuff. And so now as the pilot gets more, I don't want to say wound up, but the attention shifts and it might get a little bit more tense, then that's going to be a contagion over to your non-pilot passenger or your student or whatever it is. And so what we noticed here in the slide is that the passenger is now watching the pilot quite a bit. And there is a lot of social pressure, even if you're not talking about it. So here comes the anticipate and prediction part of our schedule here. We have to have the pilot ask themselves, if it gets worse, what's it going to look like? So we're in the pause now, right? So it could be that I have a power loss. It could be that the engine gets even rougher. It could be that the skies that were supposed to be fairly good are deteriorating. And so that means that my workload is getting increased. Or what if it stays the same? What's my level of distraction? Have I normalized it? Have I said, well, it's been fine for 20 minutes. It's going to be fine for 20 more. And then if we ask ourselves the question, what if I act now? Well, there's multiple airports. It's still daylight. I can make a calm decision. And so you got to ask yourself the questions like, what if it gets worse? What if it stays the same? What happens if I just act now? And then we come to the fourth aspect, which is the actual decision making. So instead of waiting for certainty, the pilot chooses margin. And so this pilot enriches the mixture slightly. The roughness improves, but it does not go away. And advises ATC, request vectors to the nearest airport, precautionary, and tells the passenger, I love this sentence, nothing feels unsafe right now, but we're choosing to land while everything feels easy. Again, this is a decision that's not driven by fear. It's driven by that calmness. And then we act. So they eventually land at an airport. The mechanic takes a look at things and figures out what it was. The mechanic said, had you flown another hour, it could have been a real problem. Passengers' takeaway is like, I'm glad. We didn't wait till it got scary. And the pilot's takeaway is that pause gave me a chance to pay attention, reflect, and make a better decision. Okie dokie. We're going to talk a little bit about thinking, and then you'll be free to move about the cabin. I might be a couple minutes late, just so you know. So we like to take new information and shove it into an old way of thinking. Humans are that way. We have boxes for everything. And we like to take new stuff that's happening and shove it in an old box. That's called first order thinking. It tends to be pretty emotional and based on the past. And it can be impulsive and flawed. And so what I'm asking you all to do is called second order thinking. That's to take the new data, to pause, to look at it more logically, and to become more methodical. For that reason, I'm now going to talk to you about the MTV show that is called Catfish. Actually, a show on MTV. These are the hosts, Neve and Max. This is Bethany. And Bethany was actually on the show Catfish. For those of you who don't know what a catfish is, it is somebody that says they're one person online and they may or may not be that person. So the MTV show, people write in. And so Bethany, this is actually Bethany, who actually wrote in and said, I'm in love with Justin. And Justin is a model. He wants to marry me and he wants to start a family. I've sent Justin quite a bit of money for a new phone because we'd never been able to video chat. And he has stood me up 4 or 5 times when we're going to meet each other in person. And I'm ready to move. So I just want to know if Justin is real. Because she's given him, I don't know, $4,000, $5,000. They've been talking for about 4 years. They've never video chatted or met in person. So she needs to know, hey, is Justin real? I love this show because I watch people's brains for a living. So I watch what people do with their brains during the show. Here's Justin, cute as my mechanic, right? So Justin's a model again. They start the show by gathering all sorts of data. And so they find out about Justin and where he lives, where he works, what he does. And they start presenting this information to Bethany. Well, guess what that lower brain says? No, 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 no. No, Justin knows me. He loves me. He's listened to me for 4 years. And yeah, no. So there's that denial. Then in the show, they have the reveal where they say, Bethany, we have found Justin. Do you want to know who he is? Most everybody says, yes, I want to know who I've given $5,000 to in the past 4 years. And as they reveal that, then comes second order thinking, which is new data based with reality. And what we can see is a little bit of resignation. So do you all want to see Justin? Yep. And this is actually true. Welcome, Terry. So this is Terry that went to high school with Bethany. And he's on a mission to kind of right some wrongs because Bethany jilted him in high school. He really never meant this to go so far, but it did. And he lives in his mom's basement. So you can see that first order thinking is this guy is really Justin. He really loves me. I'm going to move across the country. The second order thinking, when I allow the new data, it lines up with reality and I have time to pause. Welcome, Terry. Okay. So, I want to leave you with a thought tonight. Again, we rely on technology, procedures, all that good stuff. You know what's in the center of it all? As you can see in the graphic, is your beautiful brain. Our attention determines what we see, and our decision making is based on our attention and our emotional state. I hope that you've enjoyed learning a bit about how you pay attention, how you make decisions, and how you can choose to have a second thought. That's why my mission is to help people to make better decisions, and also that we can support each other because MentorLIVE is a community. These groups that we have, we're a community, and we can support each other in making safer choices. And I'm just so glad that you're here and that you spent some time with me tonight. I wanted to just take a quick second and tell you a little bit about what I'm going to be up to this year. So again, I have a companion safety seminar coming up this Friday and Saturday in San Luis Obispo. I will be at Sun and Fun, and I'm going to be doing some meet and greets with Avemco and Flying Eyes and METAR Maps and Lightspeed, and also presenting for AOPA. I'll be doing this presentation live, and then I'll be at Oshkosh again this year. Pilot Plus One is a seminar series that I started last year. It has a left seat pilot track and right seat ready on the right. So there are me, thee, and we sessions. So there are left seat pilot, you get wings credit. We have some fantastic presenters. And then the Right Seat Ready folks get to go through Right Seat Ready. Everybody gets Redbird Simulator training. May 29th and 30th, we will be at Oshkosh in the Pilot Proficiency Center. And June 12th and 13th, we're going to be in Creve Coeur, which is in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And again, On Second Thought is airing every second Wednesday on secondthought.me. We do have wings credit for pilots. We do have credits for A&P mechanics and IAs. And so that's where I'll be. And I just encourage you to come and say hello and maybe give me some examples of things that you enjoyed learning about. What I think is fantastic, again, about our On Second Thought live video series is that, we have 600, well, we have between 400 and 600 people watching at any given month. And we have over 100 people that are taking the quiz. And you're taking the quiz and you're getting your 100%. And of course, you get your wings credit, but it makes me as a presenter and an educator so happy that maybe something that we talked about gave you just a modicum more education and that level of safety. So I wanted to, again, say thank you for listening and paying attention, and see how I did that with paying attention. And wanted to know if there are any questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple of good ones, Jolie. First one, cool username, SeaWolfCom. I wish my certificate said that. Asked, how do you recommend pausing when you need to do something that's almost instinctive, like recovering from a stall, or say in medicine, like responding to a code?
Yes, that's a great question, by the way. So what I might suggest is a breathing technique. It doesn't take very long, but it gives us that 3 to 5 seconds. So it sounds like 2 sharp inhales and a big exhale. So it's what that does with those big inhales is it makes your ribs go out. It gives more blood to your heart. And the breathing does give you a little bit more oxygen. It also forces you to pause that 3 or 4 seconds, which helps us make better decisions. And again, in the military, it was, before you do anything, you're winding your watch. That's that 2, 3, 4 seconds that allows us to take things to the top part of our brain so that we can have more perspective than that little nervous Nelly that's running around downstairs.
Great. Gary asked a real similar question, and I think you're going to have a similar answer, but I like the question. If we're startled or surprised, and he's contrasting that to being fixated, what would you recommend as some ways to get us into that second order thinking?
Yeah, yeah. We all can have our reaction. There's nothing wrong with us reacting. That's a human thing to do. But what happens is we get so uncomfortable with that squirt of cortisol or adrenaline that we want to act quickly. So we have to break that. So just like the breathing I was talking about, that ability when you get startled, I startle very easily. I always have. I don't know why. And so I understand what that's like to be shocked or surprised. But that's when I tell myself to take those breaths and to try to calm down. When I'm training people with Right Seat Ready, we have their pilot become what we call a slump-o-matic. So they've passed out. And so, of course, the first thing to do is to make sure that that person is not on the flight controls. But then you need to take a couple of deep breaths because that airplane wants to fly. Most likely it's happened en route. The airplane's trimmed, autopilot, whatever's going on, the engine systems are fine. And we just have to take that breath so that we are not coming from fight, flight, or freeze. So again, it's that building in that pause, however that works for you. But I really like that breathing that's just 2 sharp inhales. And that usually buys you a little bit of time. For those of you that might have had some trauma survivors have a little bit rougher go because they tend pre-thought to determine that something is dangerous versus safe. So if you have somebody that you're working with, if you're working with a student that has had some sort of trauma, then what we have to do is work a little bit more with them, because pre-thought, they interpret danger and they stay low-brained. So a little bit more than you asked, but I think it's
No,
important.
that's good stuff, and you were reading in my mind mentioning working with a student, because there's been several comments, and I agree. That we wish there was more of this kind of thing, and human factors in general in initial CFI training, and definitely in FERCs.
Yes.
So Flash actually asked, has Jolie ever considered putting out any kind of specific content for CFIs?
Ah, I have thought about it, and for this year, the closest thing for that is the On Second Thought live video series. And so you can see the psychology notes, you can see the studies that we've used. And for folks that haven't seen episodes 1, 2, or 3, you can watch those, because those are the building blocks for episodes 4 through 12. And and so you'll get to see some of this content and learn how to apply it to your instruction, if that's the case. And then I also do consultations with folks. I do that at least once or twice a week, where someone contacts me and I do a consultation with them. I have a CFI that I'm working with now that has a really anxious student. And so we're talking about that. But that's a
Awesome.
great question.
And I also want to point out, if you're not familiar, if you're viewing tonight and you're not familiar with the Right Seat Ready program, if you're curious, Jolie and Harvey Madison from Redbird did a Mentor Live in June of last year about that program in specific. So
We did.
I
We
view
did.
that it's a good recommendation, I think, for your students who have companions, because they might get to enjoy that certificate they're working so hard for a little bit more.
Right, right. And with the companions, we've made 7 or 8 pilots, on up to instrument and commercial pilots who came through Right Seat Ready, and aircraft owners. So, and again, we're sponsored by Avemco. They believe strongly in safety, of course. And so they sponsor On Second Thought and help out with Right Seat Ready and Pilot Plus One. So we're really grateful for that.
Awesome. Well, it looks like John's telling me to get moving. So
It's
thank you
8
so
minutes
much.
after.
Yeah, this is the virtual umbrella handle, but thank you so much for stepping up on such short notice. We can't get enough of this kind of content. I think it's so important to put in front of folks. And Bob just passed me a note. If anyone who's with us is having trouble getting to the correct quiz, scroll down to the quiz link under the video screen, just in case you're having a hard time finding that. So we want you to take that quiz and get that credit. So again, thank you so much, Jolie. For our viewers, make sure and mark your calendar for next month. We're going to give you a good ending to your tax day and talk about some good aviation stuff. If you haven't had a chance to read Yikes, I've been pronouncing it Yikes in my head all week. But JJ is going to take his book about NASA reports as case studies and apply it to what we do in flight instruction. And if you've never had a chance to hear him present, he's a really dynamic presenter. It's going to be a really great program. So hope to see everyone there. Again, if you haven't, go ahead and take the quiz, get your wings credit. And, I'll say this at the beginning and end of every broadcast. If you're not a NAFI member, we'd love to have you. Don't have to be a CFI to be a NAFI member. You just got to care about aviation safety, and you do, because you're here. So join us and be a part of our mission. So with that being said, thank you so much for being here this evening. We'll go ahead and call this a wrap, and we'll see everybody for Mentor Live number 103 next month. Thanks again, Jolie.